Are you looking to make a homemade gift for the holidays? Or maybe just make yourself a little breakfast or even a snack? Well, try my homemade granola. It is delicious. And this makes 8 generous servings. So if you're interested, stay tuned because it's coming up next. Hello and welcome to my kitchen. My name is Roy. I am a home cook and amateur baker, and I am here on this channel sharing recipes that have helped me to lose over 125 pounds, whether those recipes are mine or someone else's. Now today is one of mine. It comes as a request from a subscriber who was wondering if I had a granola recipe, and I did not, so I figured that sounds like something I should have because I do buy granola. Why not find one that's a little lower in bites and points? And while this isn't exactly a Christmas recipe, which is what I said I'd be doing up until Christmas, it is in the fact that it is a giftable food. So you could make this as part of a basket. You could just make this as the gift itself. Like I'm storing mine in this jar. A jar full of granola would be a great gift for anyone. And you can adapt this. You can add nuts if you want. You can add dried fruits. And I will talk about that a little bit more as we go on. But first, let's go over the ingredients. I have 2 cups of old-fashioned oats. You want old-fashioned oats, not like quick oats. Definitely not Irish oats, because those are very hard. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but I'll put a picture of them up here. They're like the oat before they get flattened. But these are the old-fashioned ones. And you want these because these will cook without burning within the time that we are in there. If you ended up using quick oats, those are cut down smaller. They may have a chance of burning before everything else is finished cooking. We also have 1 cup of rice cereal, Rice Krispies, store brand Rice Krispies. You could use brown rice if you wanted to use more whole grain. And then speaking of whole grains, I am adding 1 cup of, this one is Fiber One cereal. I also have used all bran. So either of those would be fine and it wouldn't change the points or bites depending on which ones you used. But this one is Fiber One, and this helps to give this granola a little nutty flavor without actually adding nuts to it. We also have 2 egg whites here. You don't want the yolks in this because yolks tend to keep things moist and whites tend to dry things out. You definitely want this to be able to dry out and get crunchy rather than be soggy. We have a 1/3 cup of sugar-free maple syrup, and I use Vermont brand, but anyone that you use is fine. We have 1/4 cup of brown sugar replacement. Now, when I first made it, I made it with 2 tablespoons of brown sugar replacement. And it was tasty, it was good, but I wanted a little more sweetness than I would get from just these cereals and a little bit of syrup. So I've upped it to 1/4 cup. But you could play around with that. You could bring it down to 2 if you just wanted a mild sweetness. You could drop it to 3 if you wanted it somewhere in between. You can play around with the brown sugar sweetener there. But the brown sugar definitely helps to enhance that nutty flavor that I'm going for. We also have 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract, 1/4 teaspoon of salt, 1 tablespoon of cinnamon. Now this is another place where you can play around with it. When I first came up with this recipe, I used 2 teaspoons, and I could detect it there, but it was very mild. I wanted to up that cinnamon flavor. If you didn't want a strong cinnamon flavor, then you could drop it down to 2 teaspoons, 2.5 teaspoons, another place you can play around with the flavor. And then last but not least, 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. The nutmeg just gives it a little sweetness that kind of enhances the cinnamon, but also is its own distinct background note. So that's all we have there. And this comes together pretty quickly. So I'm not even gonna pause or anything. We're just gonna shuffle a few things around. We're gonna move our cereals over to the side here. Bring in our big bowl. You want a big bowl to mix this stuff in because you're gonna be, and speaking of mixing, guess what I don't have? My silicone spatula. You know, there's always something I forget. Okay, there we are. Wouldn't be me if I didn't forget something. Okay, so in our, sorry, I didn't mean to clunk it. In our big bowl, we're going to add in the egg whites. Now, all of this is at room temperature. You want all of your ingredients at room temperature because they are going to combine much more easily if they're all the same temperature. If things are cold, they're going to be very reluctant to mix together because they're kind of like, you know, when you're cold, you're kind of like huddled in there. Same thing with, I mean, not that they're huddled, but you know what I'm saying. They kind of keep to themselves and you want them loose and ready to mingle. You know, it's always like that when it's warmer, right? All right, so going to take the egg whites and we're just going to mix those up just until they become frothy. And it doesn't have to be, you know, you don't need to break out the hand mixer for this. You just kind of want the egg whites to break up and become more homogeneous than they would be typically. Usually they're still kind of like separate, but that's all. See, you just want it to get a little frothy. Then you're going to add in the maple syrup. And I want all that sweetness in there. And the brown sugar replacement. Now you could, if you wanted to make this for someone who's not on a weight loss journey, or if you don't use artificial sweeteners, this brown sugar, this maple syrup, you can use the real stuff. It'd be the same exact process. We're just saving some bites, points, and calories and macros by using these items, but you could use the regular versions. Okay, so we're just gonna mix this just until it becomes, my arm is already getting tired. My muscles have not been very kind to me lately, but we are pushing through. All right, so you just want it homogeneous, you know, basically one color. You don't want to see big chunks of the brown sugar. Now we're going to add in the extract, the salt, the cinnamon, and the nutmeg. Ooh, that cinnamon's really hitting you in the nose. And we're going to whisk this together. Now you have to be careful of the cinnamon, especially it's very dry and powdery. So you want to mix it gently at first so it's not like flying up. But you want to just mix this together, scrape down the sides, and voila. So let me move a couple of these things out of my way, and then we will move on. Okay, that was pretty quick so far. Now all we're going to do is throw in our cereals. If you wanted to, this is basically the same type of mixture in this big bowl that you would make if you wanted to make spiced nuts. So if you wanted, you could make this and then just throw in a bunch of nuts and do the same thing that we're going to do with the cereals. and make yourself some mixed or spiced nuts. That is also an option of what you can do with this, and to make a little Christmas gift, a little something you can share with coworkers as a little appreciation gift. So if you wanted, you could do, instead of the cereal, you could throw in some nuts in their place and do the same thing. So we're going to throw in our oats, our Rice Krispies, and our Fiber One, and we're just going to gently fold this around, gently toss it so that all of the cereal gets coated. So you just want to make sure you mix it so that everything gets nicely coated with the egg whites and sweeteners and spices, because that's not only what's going to give it its flavor, it's also going to be what helps to bind this into the clusters that we know of when we think of granola. So that looks pretty good. Everything looks well coated. Let's put this over here and bring in our sheet pan. Now I have my sheet pan lined with a sheet of parchment. Now this is pre-cut. I don't cut that perfectly. And I got this through Amazon. I have these listed in my Amazon storefront if you needed to get them. I just find them much more convenient than trying to cut them out all the time. If you don't have parchment sheets or parchment paper, you don't want to use it, just spray the sheet pan very well with cooking spray so that none of this sticks. And I did notice when I did this the first time, and you'll see when we're going to stir this at the 20-minute mark, that it was a little difficult to keep the parchment in place. So I ended up removing it after the first 20 minutes, but most of this had already cooked. So it was set enough that I didn't worry about it being on the sheet pan without the parchment. But we'll see if that still holds true this time. Hopefully it won't be as difficult to toss. But we're just going to lay this out onto our sheet pan here. Make sure you get all of that in there. And then we're just going to, I'm going to put 2 fingers down to hold the parchment in place and just spread this out into a very thin layer. It's okay if they're still touching because you want to get some of those clumps, and we're going to break those up anyways after. Now this is great just as a cereal. It's great just as a snack. Paul and I were just snacking on this just right out of the jar. So, you know, on top of ice cream, on top of yogurt. This is very versatile, just like any granola. That looks pretty good. You don't have to get too crazy about how thin it is. Now, this is going to go into a 325-degree oven for 20 minutes. Then we'll take it out and I'll show you. We have to toss it a little bit, break up the clusters. That's where I had a little difficulty with the parchment, and that may still be true this time. But we need to toss it around, break it up, and then put it back in for 10 minutes. Do the same thing, put it back in for 5 to 10 minutes. But I'll be back after the 20 minutes and show you where we go from there. Be right back. Okay, so here's the first round. You can see it's pretty much one giant mass here. You obviously want to keep at least 1 mitt on when you're breaking this up. And hopefully this parchment won't be a problem. But I just ended up like chopping it. It's going to be very soft right now. And you might think, oh my God, this is not going to be a granola. It crisps up very nicely. Trust me on that. Okay, see, I'm pulling it off of the parchment and breaking it up that way. Okay, this is working. I might be able to leave the parchment on. I might have just been a little too enthusiastic. Of course, having it on that rack doesn't help. But you're just going to break it all up and carefully, because as I said, this pan is hot. So you don't want to burn yourself. I don't know if you can see, I already burnt myself, not on this rack, but the first round that I tested, that's where I got that little burn. Okay, I think I see that parchment is very shifty, but it doesn't matter. It was just mostly to keep that first round from sticking to the pan too much. But if you coat the pan well with the cooking spray, you shouldn't have a problem if you didn't have any parchment or didn't want to use it. All right, so that's broken up. I'm going to reposition my parchment, spread this out a little bit. If there are still big chunks, don't worry about it. We're going to be doing this again. Just spread it out. You can spread it out a little further this time and have a little gap. Now it's going to go back in for 10 minutes this time. Each time, sorry about that. Each time we're going to cut it by about half. So the first time was 20 minutes, then we're going to go to 10, then we're going to go to 5 or 10, somewhere in there. But I will show you that. But we're going to come back at 10 and we'll break it up a little bit more. Okay, round 2. This one should be a little easier to break up because they've already been, I don't know why I took both of those off. They've already been broken up a bit. Now they're still going to be a little soft, but not as soft as they were during the first round. You want the cereals out at the edge to come in towards the center, and the ones in the center to go out to the edge. You just want to make sure it's all mixed up fairly well, so that way anything that's staying on the outside isn't going to end up burning. So you just basically a quick stir, and it's going to go back in. Now it's going to go in 5 to 10 minutes, and that's going to be until it's crunchy. And like right now, I can feel it's a little soft, but it's going to get a little crunchier, but it is a little drier than it was after the first round. So after this round, it should be a little drier still. Now it's not going to be as crunchy as it's going to get. So don't take it out expecting it to be a crunchy granola. It's still going to be somewhat soft, but it's going to be crunchier than it is now. And then we're going to have to let it cool completely before you get that nice crunch that you're hoping for. So this is going back in 5 to 10 minutes, and I'll be back. Okay, last round, and that was in for the full 10 minutes, which I expected it would be because that's what I got the last time. But because some ovens run warmer, Jennifer Lynn, I figured I'd give more of a range, but you can see it feels drier than it did the last time, just slightly. And you can hear it's a little solid, but it's not anywhere near as solid as it's going to be. Now I'm going to take it off of the parchment. You don't have to, but the reason I'm going to is I want to make a side-by-side comparison of the sound to show you how much crispier and crunchier this is going to get. So this is what it sounds like when it comes out of the oven for the last time. A little crunchy, a little clunk on the pan. But we're gonna let this cool first for about 5 minutes, and then we're gonna break up any chunks that are too large, just because you want it broken up into smaller bits. So I'll give it 5 minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, so it's been about 5 minutes and you can hear, I hope, it's already getting a little crispier and crunchier just because it's had a little chance to cool down, and all of those things that were hot in the liquid are now like drying up, like the egg whites. Now, you won't see any egg. You won't feel like there's egg on this. That is just used as a binder for all of the sweetness and the spice that we put in here. So now we're just going to go through in like pieces like this that are a little big. You just want to break them up a bit. I mean, you don't have to be too fine about it, but you just want to break them up so that they have a chance to cool more and give you a lot of little crunchy bits. And actually, I didn't do too bad breaking them up while they were in the oven. There are a few big ones. Now, like I said, you could, if you wanted, if you had the Bites points, or if you're giving this as a gift and you just want to use the regular syrup, the regular sugar, you can obviously do that. You can also add nuts to this. I would add probably about a half a cup of chopped nuts, whatever kind of nuts you wanted. And I would add those in with the cereal when you mixed it all together in the big bowl with the liquid, because you want those nuts to be coated in this as well. If you wanted to add dried fruits like raisins, dried cranberries, dried blueberries, currants, whatever, you would not add those in until after it's cooled down and we put it all together in the bin, because you don't want them cooked. You don't need them coated with the sweetness and the spice. You'll add that kind of thing in later. You could even add chocolate chips. I've heard of people adding chocolate chips to their granola. You could do that, but not until the end, obviously, when it's totally cooled. Otherwise, you're gonna have a lot of melted chocolate in here. So we're just gonna break this up. And as I said, you could do the same thing, everything from the beginning, but in place of the cereal, use nuts. You could use a mixture of nuts. You could use all the same. You could do all walnuts. And you could add a little cayenne to it to make a little spicy sweet mixture. You could swap out the cinnamon nutmeg for some herbs. You know, you can play around with it if you're doing it as nuts. But as granola, you want some sweetness to it and a little bit of spice. So that looks pretty well broken up to me. So here comes the hard part. We have to let it cool completely. We need like maybe an hour, hour and a half, but I will come back later once it's cooled down and we will package it up and I will give you all those lovely nutrition facts that I'm sure you're eager to hear about. So I'll be back shortly. Okay, so it has been about 4 hours since I let this sit here to cool to room temperature. So you don't want to seal this away with any of that moisture left inside. So you want it out for a few hours to let that evaporate. If you want to leave it overnight, if you do it like later in the day, that wouldn't hurt it either. So I'm going to transfer this into my jar here. And this is like a 4-cup jar. And this should about fill it because this gives you roughly 8 half-cup servings. And you can hear from those clinks on the metal funnel that this is dry. This is a nice firm granola. Looks like we have a lot more than 4 cups. So this is a 4-cup. Let me see how much extra we have here. Okay, so we have a cup measure here. Let's see. So we have about 4 3/4 cup. So it'll give you a little over half a cup per serving. But I'm listing it as about half a cup. And for that half cup, this is only going to be 3 bites. as opposed to like the Quaker granola we usually get. Granted, it has almonds, but that one is actually 7 bites or points for the same amount. So you're getting over half of the savings on your bites or points. And if your personal points give you oats for free, it's going to be even lower. And if you're following calories, this would be 115 for 1/8 of this, a little over half a cup. And if you are following macros, the fat would be 1.8 grams, the carbs would be 27.1 grams, and the protein would be 4.2 grams. And that's for a little, let's say a heaping half cup of the granola. So whether you use this as a gift, whether you use it for your breakfast, your ice cream, or just a snack, it's a delicious, low bite, low calorie option if you want a granola. So I hope that you liked this recipe, and if you did, please give me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate that. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't yet and you are looking for recipes that can help you on a weight loss journey. And share this video if you know someone out there who would be interested in something like this. Also, hit the notification bell for the next time I upload any sort of video. And comment down below, do you plan on making this for yourself or as a gift? You could make quite a big batch, put it in maybe half this size jar, give it out as gifts. Be a nice little tasty treat, even if you just kept it at your desk for a snack. So comment down below what your plans are for this. Are you going to try it this way? Or are you going to make it with the real sugar and syrup? Either way is a good option. You're going to add nuts, maybe some dried fruit. The world is your oyster, so do as you'd like. And also follow me over on social media. Here is my Instagram handle. And there are 2 Facebook groups that I am part of. One is mine, Recipes with Roy, and the other one is Finding Our Way, WEIGH. And that one I co-admin with Jennifer Lynn from the Jennifer Lynn channel, as well as Bree Coleman from Balancing Life with Bree. So join us over there. There are a lot of tips, tricks, recipes, support, and a lot of great people. So join us over there if you can. And I am going to maybe eat some of this extra for a snack. But whether I have it as a snack or part of my breakfast, maybe even on a dessert, it's going to be delicious. So until next time, bye.